That is it.
This guy is funny.
That is it.
Do it again. What these kids? What the?
Bitch, clock it. Bitch, clock that T. Bitch, I hope better start clocking that T, bitch.
It was Easter, laughter, balloons, and children playing. Seconds later, those same children watched their mother slam her car into their father. The celebration became a scream no one could ever forget. Easter Sunday, 2016, Birmingham, Alabama. Families across the city gathered around dinner tables, children hunted for brightly colored eggs in backyards, and laughter echoed through neighborhoods celebrating resurrection and renewal. At a home on Lisa Lane, the celebration was bigger than most. It wasn't just Easter, it was also a birthday party for a little girl who deserved the world. Balloons floated near the ceiling, cake sat waiting on the counter. Music played softly in the background while relatives filled plates with food and watched children race through the house. Mackenzie James Bostic, 27 years old, was there for his daughter. He was there for all his children, 3 biological, 2 he raised as his own. He worked hard every single day as a juvenile detention officer, a job that demanded patience, strength, and control. His family called him one of the few good men left, a man who showed up, a man who did what needed to be done. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because stories like this need to be heard. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. But that Easter Sunday, something went wrong. An argument started. Voices rose. The celebration stopped. Guests grew uncomfortable. Some tried to step in. Others moved the children away from the noise. Then Shatisse Renee Jackson, the mother of Mackenzie's children, left the house. People thought it was over. They were wrong. If you've ever trusted someone you shouldn't have, subscribe now, because not every betrayal gives you a second chance. She came back, and when she did, everything changed. A gunshot cracked through the air. Panic spread. Mackenzie moved outside, maybe trying to calm things down, maybe trying to protect everyone still inside. But Shatisse wasn't done. She got into her car, the engine roared, tires screeched, and in front of family, in front of friends, in front of children, some of them hers and his, she drove that car straight into Mackenzie Bostic, pinning him against the house. The celebration turned into a crime scene. The father became a victim. The holiday became a nightmare no child should ever witness. The scariest part? His children watched it happen. Subscribe so you never miss the stories that show how fast love can turn deadly. How does a day meant for joy and rebirth end with a man crushed between steel and brick, while his own children watch? Mackenzie James Bostic wasn't famous. He wasn't rich. He didn't have thousands of followers or a platform to share his story. But to the people who knew him, he was everything. Born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama, Mackenzie grew up in a working-class neighborhood where everyone knew each other's names. He attended local public schools, stayed out of trouble, and kept his head down. Teachers remembered him as respectful, quiet, but dependable. The kind of student who didn't need attention. He just did what was right. After high school, Mackenzie didn't chase fame or fortune. He chose stability. He trained to work in the juvenile justice system and became a detention officer at a secure facility for troubled youth. It wasn't glamorous work. It was long hours, night shifts, weekends. He dealt with kids who had broken the law, kids who were angry, hurt, and lost. But Mackenzie didn't judge them. He supervised them. He kept them safe. He enforced the rules firmly but fairly. The young people in that facility saw him as someone they could respect. He didn't yell. He didn't abuse his authority. When fights broke out, he stepped in calmly. When someone needed help filling out paperwork or understanding the rules, he took the time to explain. His supervisors trusted him. His co-workers relied on him. He showed up on time, followed protocol, and never caused problems. But his real legacy wasn't at work. It was at home. Mackenzie was a father to 5 children. 3 were his biological kids born from his relationship with Shatisse Jackson. 2 others weren't his by blood, but he treated them like they were. He picked them up from school. He fed them. He made sure they had clothes, school supplies, and a roof over their heads. He attended parent meetings, helped with homework, and showed up to birthday parties and family gatherings. His family called him one of the few good men left, a man who worked hard, a man who didn't run from responsibility. A man who loved his children and tried to do right by them, even when things got difficult. Neighbors saw him walking with the kids, playing in the yard, keeping them in line. He wasn't perfect, no one is, but he was present, he was steady. He was the kind of father too many children never get to have. And on Easter Sunday 2025 he showed up again. For his daughter's birthday. For his family. For his kids. He had no idea it would be the last time.
A deadly act of rage between a mother and father unfolded with their children possibly in the back seat. Birmingham police say they responded to a chaotic scene on Lisa Lane around 9:50 Easter Sunday night. It was initially 4 shots being fired, but while en route, officers received an update.
Officers were updated that a female was trying to run over a male in a vehicle.
Investigators found 27-year-old McKees James Bostic pinned between a vehicle and a house where a birthday party and Easter celebration had taken place.
The female suspect did in fact run over the male. He was trapped between the vehicle and a house.
Investigators say the incident stemmed from a domestic argument between Bostic and a woman he shares children with. A large crowd, including family members and children, witnessed the incident. It got so chaotic, Birmingham police had to call a max emergency for all officers to respond to the scene.
There's a large commotion. Family members were visibly upset because their loved one was just hit, and officers could not get the scene under control with each precinct officers.
Under Alabama law, this deadly incident could mean serious charges if intent is determined.
Because those kids were there, this can now be a capital murder case. Because anytime in Alabama when there's a child that the couple shares in common that's under the age of 14, you now could be looking at capital murder.
April 20th, 2025, Easter Sunday. The sun rose over Birmingham with the kind of warmth that makes people forget their worries for a while. Churches filled with hymns, families cooked big meals. Children wore their Sunday best and ran through backyards with baskets in hand, hunting for hidden treasures. At the home on Lisa Lane, the day started like any other holiday celebration. Relatives arrived early, some brought side dishes. Others carried gifts for the birthday girl, Mackenzie's daughter, who was turning another year older on the same day the world celebrated new beginnings. The timing felt perfect. Easter and a birthday. Double the joy, double the reason to gather. Inside the house, the kitchen filled with the smell of food being prepared. Plates were stacked on the counter. Cups lined the table. Music played softly in the background, something upbeat, something that made people smile. Children ran through the hallways, their voices loud and carefree. Adults talked and laughed, catching up on life, work, and everything in between. Mackenzie was there, present, engaged. He helped set things up, greeted guests, and kept an eye on the kids. He wasn't the loudest person in the room, but he was steady, reliable, the kind of presence that made people feel safe. Outside, the weather was beautiful. Neighbors could be heard celebrating in their own yards. Car doors opened and closed as more family members arrived. The atmosphere was light, joyful, normal. No one sensed anything wrong. Shattis Jackson was there too. She moved through the house, interacting with guests, managing the children. To anyone watching, it looked like a regular co-parenting situation. Two people who shared kids, doing their best to make the day special for the family. There were no outward signs of tension. No heated words. No drama. Not yet. The afternoon passed smoothly. Food was served, plates were filled. The birthday cake came out, candles flickering on top. Everyone sang. The little girl smiled, surrounded by the people who loved her most. Cameras captured the moment. Laughter echoed through the house. This was what Easter was supposed to be. This was what birthdays were meant to feel like. But as the sun began to set and the evening crept in, something shifted. Conversations grew quieter. The energy changed. Small tensions that had been buried under smiles and politeness started to surface. Mackenzie and Shattis exchanged words. At first it seemed minor, just a disagreement. The kind of thing couples, even ex-couples, deal with when they're trying to coexist for the sake of their children. But this wasn't just another argument. This was the beginning of the end. No one knows exactly what sparked it. Maybe it was something small, a comment, a look. A decision about the children that one of them didn't agree with. Whatever it was, it lit a fuse. Mackenzie and Shattis's voices began to rise. At first, people tried to ignore it. Family gatherings sometimes have moments like this. Old wounds reopening, frustrations bubbling to the surface. Guests turned their attention elsewhere, hoping it would pass. Someone turned the music up slightly. Others stepped outside with the kids, trying to keep them distracted. But the argument didn't fade. It grew louder. Witnesses inside the house later told police that the disagreement became impossible to ignore. Words were thrown back and forth, sharp and angry. Some relatives moved closer, trying to mediate, trying to calm things down before the situation got out of hand. A few people placed themselves between Murd3red and Shatisse, urging them both to take a breath, to remember where they were, to remember the children. For a moment it seemed like it might work. Shatisse walked away. She grabbed her keys, said something under her breath, and headed toward the door. Murd3red didn't follow. He stayed inside, surrounded by family members who were now visibly uncomfortable. The celebration had stopped. The joy was gone. What had been a day of laughter and love now felt heavy, tense, uncertain. But people thought the worst was over. Shatisse had left. The argument was done. Things could settle. Maybe she'd cool off and come back later. Maybe she wouldn't. Either way, the immediate conflict seemed to have ended. The children were ushered back inside. Adults tried to restore some sense of normalcy. Someone suggested cutting more cake. Another person started cleaning up plates, anything to distract from what had just happened. Murd3red stood near the front of the house, quiet now, processing, maybe replaying the argument in his head, maybe wondering if he should have handled it differently, maybe just trying to shake off the tension so the day could still be salvaged for his daughter. No one in that house knew it would be their last family argument. No one knew that in just a few minutes Shatisse would return. And when she did, she wouldn't come back to talk. Shatisse Jackson walked out of that house with her keys in hand and anger in her chest. The door closed behind her. The engine started. Tires rolled over gravel as her car pulled away from the curb. Some people watched from the window. Others just exhaled, relieved that the tension had finally left the room. Inside, the mood was awkward. The kind of silence that follows a fight no one wanted to witness. Guests exchanged glances but didn't say much. A few whispered to each other, asking if everything was okay, wondering if they should leave or stay. The children, confused and upset, clung to the adults they trusted most. Murd3red stayed near the front of the house. He didn't chase after her. He didn't yell. He just stood there, arms crossed, staring at nothing in particular. Some family members approached him, asking if he was all right, suggesting he take a walk or step outside for air. He nodded but didn't move. He was tired of the conflict, tired of the back and forth, tired of trying to keep peace in a situation that never seemed to stay peaceful for long. But he stayed. For his daughter, for the kids, for the family that had come together to celebrate. Minutes passed, 10, maybe 15. The house began to settle. Someone turned the music back on, quieter this time. A cousin started cleaning up cups and plates. Another relative took the children into a back room to play games, trying to distract them from what they'd just heard. People assumed Shatisse had gone home, or to a friend's house, somewhere to cool off. It wasn't the first time they'd argued. It probably wouldn't be the last. But it was over now, at least that's what everyone believed. Think about the last time you ignored a bad feeling. The last time you thought, it's fine, it'll blow over. Subscribe now, because sometimes the danger doesn't leave, it comes back. No alarms went off in anyone's mind. No one called the police. No one thought to lock the door or keep watch. There was no reason to believe anything worse was coming, but Shatisse hadn't driven far, and she wasn't done. She was coming back. The sound of tires on pavement, a car door slamming, footsteps approaching the house. Shatisse Jackson was back. Some people inside noticed her return. A few glanced toward the door, unsure of what to expect. Maybe she'd forgotten something. Maybe she'd calmed down and wanted to apologize. Maybe she just needed to grab the kids and go. But the look on her face told a different story. She didn't knock. She didn't wait to be let in. She pushed through the door like she owned every inch of that space, and in her mind, maybe she did. This was the home where her children lived. The place where she'd spent years of her life, and now, after being humiliated, after walking away in front of family and friends, she was back to reclaim control. The room went quiet again. That same uncomfortable silence from before, only heavier this time. Guests froze. No one knew what to say. No one knew what to do. Murd3red turned toward her. His expression wasn't angry. It was tired, exhausted. He didn't want to fight again. Not here. Not in front of everyone. Not on his daughter's birthday. But Shatis wasn't there to talk. She moved through the house with purpose. Her eyes locked on Mackenzie, her jaw tight, her hands clenched. Some family members tried to step forward, tried to say something, tried to de-escalate before things got worse. It was already too late. You ever see someone's eyes change? That moment when you realize they're not the person you thought they were? Subscribe and stay aware, because not every red flag waves itself in your face. What happened next unfolded in seconds, but for everyone in that house it felt like slow motion. Shatis reached for something, a flash of metal, the unmistakable weight of a firearm in her hand. Gasps, screams, people scrambling, children crying. And then, bang! A single gunshot tore through the air. The sound was deafening, violent, impossible to ignore. Ears rang, hearts pounded, chaos erupted. Mackenzie stumbled. He turned. He moved toward the door, maybe trying to get outside, maybe trying to lead the danger away from the children still inside. But Shatis wasn't finished. Not even close. Sirens wailed through the Birmingham streets. Red and blue lights painted the neighborhood in flashes of color. Police cars, fire trucks, and ambulances converged on Lisa Lane within minutes of the first 911 call. Officers arrived to a scene of complete devastation. A car pressed against the side of a house. A man's body pinned beneath it. Family members scattered across the yard, some sobbing, some pacing, some sitting on the curb in total shock. Children huddled together, their faces wet with tears, their voices hoarse from screaming. Paramedics rushed to Mackenzie. They checked for vital signs even though they already knew. His chest wasn't moving, his pulse was gone. There was nothing they could do. After a brief assessment, they stepped back and called it. Mackenzie James Bostic, 27 years old, father of 5, juvenile detention officer, was pronounced dead at the scene. Crime scene tape went up immediately. Officers began securing the area, keeping back the growing crowd of neighbors and bystanders who had gathered to see what happened. Some held their hands over their mouths. Others whispered prayers. A few recorded the scene on their phones, capturing the nightmare for the world to see. Shatis Jackson was still in the car. Officers approached cautiously, hands on their weapons, unsure if she was armed, unsure if she would resist. They ordered her out. She complied. Slowly, she opened the door and stepped onto the pavement. Her hands were placed behind her back, cuffs clicked around her wrists. She didn't fight, she didn't run, she didn't say a word. Detectives began their work. They photographed the vehicle. They measured the distance from the street to the house. They documented the position of Mackenzie's body. They collected shell casings from inside the home where the gunshot had been fired. Every detail mattered. Every piece of evidence would be used to build the case. But the most heartbreaking evidence wasn't physical. It was the children. Officers knelt beside them, speaking softly, trying to get them to answer basic questions. Where were you when it happened? Did you see what your mom did? Are you hurt? Some of the kids couldn't speak. They just stared. Others cried so hard they couldn't catch their breath. Child Protective Services was called. Family members were contacted. Arrangements were made to remove the children from the scene, but the damage was already done. Jackson was placed in the back of a Birmingham police patrol car and transported directly to the Jefferson County Jail. She didn't resist. She didn't ask for a lawyer. She didn't try to explain herself or claim it was an accident. She sat in silence as the vehicle pulled away from the scene, leaving behind the chaos she had created. The ride to the jail was quiet. Officers in the front seat exchanged glances but said nothing. What was there to say? They'd seen the body. They'd seen the car pressed against the house. They'd seen the children crying in the yard, their faces frozen in shock. This wasn't a case that required days of investigation to determine guilt. The crime had happened in front of dozens of witnesses. The perpetrator was in custody. The victim was dead. At the jail, officers processed her through the standard booking procedures. Fingerprints were rolled across ink pads and pressed onto cards. Photographs were taken from multiple angles, front view, side profiles. Personal information was recorded into the system with mechanical efficiency. Her belongings were logged and stored in a sealed bag. She was given standard-issue jail clothing and placed in a holding cell while investigators continued building their case. She answered the booking questions mechanically. Name, date of birth, address, next of kin, emergency contact, medical conditions, prior arrests. She showed no emotion throughout the entire process. No tears, no remorse, No panic, no attempt to justify what she'd done, just blank, hollow compliance. The booking officers noted her demeanor in their reports: cold, detached, unresponsive to the gravity of what had just occurred. Within hours, formal charges were filed by the district attorney's office. Capital murder, not manslaughter, not second-degree murder, not even first-degree murder. Capital murder, the most serious homicide charge in the state of Alabama, a charge reserved for the most heinous acts, a charge that carries the possibility of life in prison without parole, or in some cases the death penalty. The reason for the upgraded charge was clear and undeniable: the children. Under Alabama law, committing murder in the presence of a child under the age of 14 automatically elevates the crime to capital murder. The law exists to protect children from witnessing violence, to acknowledge the deep and lasting psychological harm caused when a child sees someone killed. It recognizes that some crimes are so damaging, so traumatic, that they warrant the harshest possible consequences. Shatisse had not only killed Mackenzie Bostic, she had done it in front of their own children. Some of them were in the car with her when she drove it into him. They felt the acceleration, they heard the impact, they saw their father's body crumple. Others watched from the yard or through the windows of the house, their eyes wide with terror as their mother committed an act of irreversible violence. The trauma those children experienced wasn't just emotional, it was legally significant. It transformed what might have been a standard murder charge into something far more severe. Prosecutors made it clear from the beginning, this wasn't a crime of passion that happened in the heat of the moment. Crimes of passion occur when someone acts in an instant, without time to think, driven purely by raw emotion. But that's not what happened here. Shatisse had left the house. She had walked out. She had gotten into her car. She had driven away. She had time to cool off. She had time to walk away completely. She had time to drive to a friend's house, to call someone, to make a different choice. Minutes passed, maybe 10, maybe 15. Enough time for reason to return, enough time for clarity to break through the anger. But she chose to come back. She chose to bring a weapon. She chose to fire it. And she chose to get into a vehicle and use it as a deadly weapon against the father of her children. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't self-defense. This was intentional, premeditated, deliberate. The district attorney's office released a public statement acknowledging the severity of the case and the tragic circumstances surrounding it. They promised a thorough prosecution and justice for Mackenzie Bostic and his family. They emphasized their commitment to holding Shatisse accountable to the fullest extent of the law. If this story shook you, subscribe right now. Don't just watch, take a stand for justice, for awareness, for every voice silenced too soon. Shatisse was held without bond. No bail, no opportunity for release. She would remain in custody at the Jefferson County Jail until her court date, housed in a cell away from the general population due to the high-profile nature of the case. Her first appearance before a judge came 2 days later on April 22, 2025. She was escorted into the courtroom in handcuffs and shackles, dressed in standard orange jail clothing. Her face remained blank, emotionless. The judge read the charges aloud. Capital murder. The words hung in the air. She said nothing, made no motion, showed no reaction. Her court-appointed public defender stood beside her and entered a not guilty plea on her behalf. It was standard procedure. The case would move forward. The courtroom was packed. Family members of Mackenzie filled the benches, some weeping quietly into tissues, others staring at Shatisse with expressions of disbelief, anger, and profound sadness. How could she? How could the mother of his children, the woman who had shared a home with him, who had built a life with him, do this? But the evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, inescapable. The witnesses were there, the children were there, the body was there, the car was there, the gun was there. Forensic evidence was being collected, statements were being documented. Video footage from neighbors' security cameras was being reviewed. Justice was coming. It's quiet. Sometimes it's verbal. Sometimes it's emotional manipulation that leaves no visible scars. Sometimes it builds slowly over months and years, hidden from friends, family, and neighbors who assume everything is fine because they never see evidence of abuse. And then one day, it explodes. The people closest to Mackenzie and Shatisse said they had arguments. Everyone knew the relationship was rocky. They'd separated before. They'd gotten back together. They had tension, but no one expected murder. No one saw this level of violence coming. And that's the problem. By the time the danger becomes clearly visible, someone is often already dead. According to data from domestic violence research, nearly half of all homicides involving intimate partners show no prior documented police involvement. That means no arrests, no restraining orders, no formal reports of abuse on file. The violence stays private, hidden behind closed doors, until it becomes fatal. Friends and family often say the same thing afterward. We had no idea it was that bad. They argued, but we never thought it would come to this. If only we'd known. But there are signs. There are always signs. We just have to be willing to see them. So how do we stop this from happening again? How do we prevent the next Bostic from dying at the hands of someone who claimed to love him? We start by paying attention. When someone close to you is in a relationship that feels off, when they seem anxious, withdrawn, or constantly walking on eggshells around their partner, don't ignore it. Don't tell yourself it's none of your business. Ask questions. Offer support. Let them know you're there. Sometimes just knowing that someone sees what's happening and cares enough to ask can make all the difference. It can open a door that the victim didn't know was available. We also need to take threats seriously. Too many times people say things in anger that others brush off as just venting or just talk. But words matter, threats matter. Research consistently shows that verbal threats of violence are one of the strongest predictors of actual physical violence. If someone says they want to hurt their partner, believe them. Document it. Report it if necessary. Don't wait for proof that the threat was serious. By the time you have that proof, it may be too late, and we need to protect the children. In this case, Mackenzie's kids didn't just lose their father, they watched him die. They witnessed their mother commit an act of violence that will haunt them for the rest of their lives. Studies on childhood trauma show that children who witness domestic violence experience long-term psychological effects including anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress, and difficulty forming healthy relationships in adulthood. No child should ever witness violence. No child should ever be placed in a position where they see one parent harm or kill the other. No child should ever be used as a tool, a witness, or a casualty in an adult's conflict. Communities need to step up too. Neighbors, co-workers, teachers, friends, everyone has a role to play in preventing domestic violence. If you hear arguing through the walls that sounds more serious than normal, don't just turn up your television. If your co-worker always has an excuse for why their partner acts controlling or possessive, don't just accept it as normal relationship dynamics. If you see something that doesn't feel right, say something. Don't assume someone else will handle it. Don't wait until it's too late. There are concrete things you can do. Check in on people regularly. Ask direct questions like, "Are you safe?" or "Do you need help?" Familiarize yourself with the resources available in your community: shelters, hotlines, legal advocates, counseling services. Share that information when appropriate. And if someone does confide in you about abuse, believe them, support them, help them create a safety plan. Don't pressure them to leave immediately, because leaving is often the most dangerous time for victims. But let them know you're there and that they have options. If you've ever ignored a warning sign, stayed silent when you should have spoken up, or walked past something that felt wrong, subscribe now, because awareness saves lives. And stories like this remind us that silence is not neutral. Silence protects the abuser, not the victim. Bostic deserved better. His children deserved better. And so does every person trapped in a dangerous relationship right now, hoping someone will notice, hoping someone will care, hoping someone will help before it's too late. There are resources available right now. The National Domestic Violence Hotline operates 24 hours a day. Local shelters provide safe housing. Legal advocates can help with restraining orders and custody issues. Counseling services exist for victims and their children. These resources exist because tragedies like this keep happening. But they can only help if people reach out, or if someone who cares reaches out on their behalf. Don't wait for the perfect moment to intervene. That moment might never come. And by the time you're certain something is seriously wrong, it might already be too late. Mackenzie James Bostic was 27 years old when he died. He never got to see his daughter grow up, never got to walk her down the aisle, never got to meet his grandchildren, never got to retire from the job he showed up to faithfully, day after day, year after year. His life was stolen from him on a day that was supposed to be filled with joy. His family remembers him as a good man, one of the few left. A man who worked hard, loved his children, and tried to do right even when it wasn't easy. His co-workers remember him as dependable, calm under pressure, fair, respectful. The kind of officer who treated troubled youth with dignity instead of contempt. His children will remember him too, but their memories are now stained with horror. They will remember Easter Sunday 2025 not as a celebration, but as the day they watched their mother kill their father. Shatise Jackson sits in a jail cell awaiting trial. Her life is over too, in a different way. She will likely spend the rest of her days behind bars, paying for a decision she made in seconds that destroyed multiple lives forever. But this story isn't just about one man or one woman or one family, it's about all of us. It's about the choices we make when we're angry, the things we ignore when we shouldn't, the moments we fail to intervene because we assume it's not our place. Mackenzie Bostic's story is a reminder that violence doesn't need a reason, it just needs an opportunity. And when we stay silent, when we look away, when we tell ourselves it's none of our business, we give violence that opportunity. And if you won't subscribe, tell us why in the comments. Because silence protects no one, and every word you type helps keep Mackenzie's memory alive. Mackenzie worked to build a home. Shatise turned it into his grave. But we, all of us, have the power to make sure stories like his are never forgotten, and that tragedies like this never happen again.
A tragedy in East Birmingham from Easter night, a father killed during a party. Officers say a woman intentionally drove into McKees James Bostic. The information just disturbing as investigators say he was wedged between a vehicle and a home on Lisa Lane. Detectives believe some of his children were there.
Your reporter Taylor Pollock's been working for this story on information of the case, possible charges. Taylor live at 5 with what she's learned.
The family just absolutely devastated over the loss of Bostic, who, as you just said, was killed when the mother of his children pinned him between a house and a car. Those family members describing him to me as a man with a big heart, a provider who worked nonstop to provide for his children. A spokesperson for Jefferson County tells me Bostic had worked with them for almost 9 years, including as an officer for juvenile court. His aunts tell me he began working with the county as soon as he graduated high school. They say the last few hours have been an absolute nightmare for them, and that they're trying to process how someone could do something so cruel.
She would do him so cruelly. It's so wrong. It's not fair. It's not right, but he's a good person. He's truly gonna be missed. You know, a long time ago they said there's a few good men left. He was one of them. He was gonna provide for his family, and he's gonna do the things that he needs to do for his family.
Birmingham police tell us they'll provide a name and a mugshot when that suspect is formally charged. A spokesperson for Jefferson County releasing the following statement to us, saying, quote, "This is obviously an extremely difficult time for his family, friends, and colleagues. We are praying for all involved." We'll continue to keep you updated as we learn more information in this absolutely awful story.